Καλησπέρα, καλώς ορίσατε. Εκπρόσωποι του Υπουργείου Πολιτισμού και Αθλητισμού, αξιότιμε πρέσβη της Ελβετίας στην Ελλάδα, κυρία Δήμαρχε της Γενέβης, κύριε Πρόεδρε του Ιδρύματος της Ελβετικής Αρχαιολογικής Σχολής στην Ελλάδα, κυρίες και κύριοι, φίλοι της Ελβετικής Σχολής, αγαπητοί συνεργάτες, φοιτήτριες και φοιτητές. Θα ήθελα απόψε να σας καλωσορίσω στην ετήσια συνέλευση της Ελβετικής Αρχαιολογικής Σχολής στην Ελλάδα. Είναι μεγάλη μου χαρά απόψε να σας παρουσιάσω το έργο της Ελβετικής Αρχαιολογικής Σχολής και εγώ αρχίζω μιλάω και το PowerPoint δεν είναι έτοιμο. Με συγχωρείτε. Εντάξει. Λοιπόν, είναι η μεγάλη μου χαρά να είστε όλοι εδώ απόψε, να σας παρουσιάσω το έργο της σχολής, όπως το είπα, σε αυτή την πολύ όμορφη αίθουσα, η οποία μας παραχώρηθηκε την Αμερικάνικη Σχολή Κλασικών Σπουδών στην Αθήνα, με την οποία διατηρώ φιλική και ιδιαίτερη σχέση και θα ήθελα με την ευκαιρία να ευχαριστήσω τη Διευθύντρια, την κυρία καθηγήτρια Μπόνα Westcoat, καθώς και τον Γενικό Διευθυντή, τον κύριο Παναγιώτη Πάνο. 1975-2025. Φέτος, όπως το βλέπετε, γιορτάζουμε τα 50 χρόνια της Ελβετικής Σχολής στην Ελλάδα. Το 1975, ο τότε διευθυντής, ο καθηγητής Καρλ Σέφολντ, περίμενε μέχρι την πτώση της Χούντας για να υποβάλει αίτηση στην ελληνική κυβέρνηση για το καθεστώς της ξένης σχολής. 50 χρόνια μετά, οι δραστηριότητες της σχολής έχουν επεκταθεί σημαντικά, ιδίως σε διάφορα μέτωπα, κυρίως εκτός Ερέτριας. Θα επικεντρωθώ στο παρόν με τις δραστηριότητες του 24, πριν αναλογιστώ το μέλλον ως συμπέρασμα. Θα ξεκινήσω, επιτρέψτε μου, με τα γαλλικά για ένα σύντομο καλωσόρισμα και μια εισαγωγή. Mesdames et messieurs les représentants du ministère de la Culture, monsieur l'ambassadeur de Suisse en Grèce, monsieur le conseiller d'État du canton de Vaud, madame la maire de Genève, monsieur le président de l'école suisse d'archéologie en Grèce, mesdames et messieurs les membres du conseil de fondation de l'école suisse d'archéologie en Grèce, mesdames et messieurs, chers collaborateurs, stagiaires étudiants, étudiantes, chers amis de l'ESAG qui nous suivez depuis la Suisse et ailleurs. Je vous souhaite une cordiale bienvenue à la conférence annuelle de l'école suisse d'archéologie en Grèce. Nous voici réunis ce soir à Athènes pour partager ce qui forme vraiment le cœur de nos activités, la recherche archéologique suisse en Grèce. C'est une occasion particulière, comme je l'ai dit en grec pour nous cette année, car l'année 2025 marque les 50 ans de l'école suisse d'archéologie qui obtint ce titre prestigieux, je dirais, en 1975, après la chute des colonels. Ce soir, en guise d'introduction, je souhaite rapidement revenir sur la vision fondatrice du projet, notamment à travers les personnes qui ont contribué à construire et à développer notre école pendant 5 décennies. Ensuite, bien entendu, je ferai la part belle au présent en présentant les résultats des opérations de terrain conduites en 2024. Puis je terminerai par évoquer rapidement l'avenir, déclinant la vision de l'école pour les années futures, en faisant notamment 2 annonces importantes concernant la gouvernance de l'école et une présence qui sera renouvelée à Athènes. Alors, cette conférence ne sera pas donnée en français, ni en grec, je m'en excuse, elle sera donnée en anglais afin de toucher un public élargi, notamment sur la toile. Après la conférence, nous aurons un moment plaisant à partager ensemble dans les jardins de l'école américaine et on aura l'occasion d'échanger autour d'un verre de vin qui a été organisé par notre ambassade. Mais avant de débuter, je vais céder immédiatement la place aux salutations protocolaires. En premier lieu, monsieur l'ambassadeur, monsieur Stéphane Estermann. Ensuite, je passerai la parole au président du conseil de fondation de l'école suisse, monsieur le conseiller aux États, Pascal Broulis. Et enfin, monsieur le conseiller d'État vaudois, Frédéric Borloo, chef du département de l'enseignement et de la formation professionnelle de l'État de Vaud, notamment en charge des hautes écoles et de l'université de Lausanne. Stéphane.
Dear President of the Board of Trustees of the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece, Mr. State Councillor Pascal Broulis, dear State Councillor Mr. Borloo, esteemed Director of the school, Professor Sylvian Fachard, dear Mayor of the City of Geneva, Ms. Christina Kitsos, dear members of the archaeological community, dear guests from Switzerland, agapiti fili apotinelada. I'm delighted to be here with you this evening for the annual meeting of the Swiss School for Archaeology, ESAG, in Greece. And I warmly welcome you to this event, which also marks the 50th anniversary of the school. Ladies and gentlemen, the ESAG is an important pillar of Switzerland's presence in Greece. It testifies to the remarkable scope, or should I better say depth, of our relations with Greece. With ESAG, Switzerland is playing in the Premier League of nations in the field of archaeology, something of which I am very proud. The discovery of the sanctuary of Artemis on Evia by Swiss archaeologists is nothing short of sensational. And I'm delighted that, I think at least, Professor Dennis Knöpfel is here with us tonight. I haven't seen him, but I was told he should be here. And it is thanks to his intuition and power of deduction that the site was found in 2017 on the basis of ancient records. Switzerland enjoys extraordinary respect and consideration in Greece, which I naturally benefit from as an ambassador. Just this morning, I was at the Greek Military Academy in Vari, southwest of Athens, where the role of the European and American philhellenes was celebrated in presence of the Defense Minister Nikos Dendias. Switzerland was among the quite exclusive circle of invited countries, alongside the greats such as the USA, Great Britain, France, Italy, and Germany. Our flag flew in the air, and the cannon shot was fired in honor of Switzerland. I mention this to elaborate on a thought that seems important to me. Archaeology is part of the tradition of Philhellenism, which is about a passion for ancient Greek heritage and the origins of European civilization, a passion that drives you too. Thank you, archaeologists, and thank you to ESAG for your fantastic and successful work in Greece over the past decades. What you do is science diplomacy at its finest. Patience, diligence, precision, scientific excellence, and deep respect for the object of your work are your hallmarks. Είμαι πολύ χαρούμενος για τη μελλοντική στενότερη συνεργασία μεταξύ της ΕΣΑΚ και της Πρεσβείας και για τα κοινά μας σχέδια για το μέλλον. Εύχομαι σε όλους σας μια υπέροχη βραδιά. Ευχαριστώ.
Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers invités, quand on fête 50 ans d'une fondation, eh bien on vient un peu du passé, pas du passé antique et grec, mais on vient d'il y a 50 ans en arrière. Et cette volonté de vouloir créer des ponts entre la Grèce et la Suisse, elle était importante. Au nom de cette amitié qui s'est constituée, au nom des différents présidents, directeurs, pour certains ici présents, d'avoir su nouer ces contacts, merci. Un grand merci d'avoir justement su créer un partenariat sur le passé, sur le présent, sur les études et sur ce que la Grèce nous met à disposition, nous la Suisse. Et un grand merci à la Grèce de mettre les différents sites en main de nos professeurs, mais également aussi en main de nos étudiants qui sont là de passage et qui apprennent leur métier, qui apprennent aussi à comprendre le passé pour mieux construire le futur. Ce travail, il est important pour nos universités et pour l'Université de Lausanne, ici représenté ce soir par M. Frédéric Borloo, conseiller d'État, chef de l'éducation du canton, mais également de l'université. Et merci à lui de soutenir cette école au travers de son mandat de conseiller d'État. 50 ans, c'est le moment de faire un peu le bilan. C'est ce qu'on va faire ces prochains mois sur le territoire lausannois, expliquer de ce qu'on a fait en Grèce, de comment se projeter ces prochaines années. Mais quand on parle de 50 ans, l'idée, c'est aussi de se projeter ces prochaines années, peut-être pour les 50 prochaines années, pour fêter un centenaire de présence Grèce, Suisse, avec ces différents sites de recherche. Et pour préparer tout ça, il faut aussi nommer des personnes, puisqu'on est souvent que de passage dans les fonctions qu'on nous prête. Les institutions sont solides si elles sont démocratiques, si elles ont été construites et pensées avec intelligence. Et ce soir, il y a des nominations qui vont être annoncées par notre directeur de l'école, Sylvian Fachard. Et puis préparer le futur, c'est également aussi investir. Et merci à la Grèce d'accepter nos investissements qu'on va faire ici, investissements qui sont préparés en concertation avec différents partenaires, le département fédéral des affaires étrangères, ensuite la Suisse implicitement, mais l'école, et puis des investisseurs privés qui sont partenaires d'un magnifique projet qu'on vous détaillera tout à l'heure dans le cadre du rapport annuel. C'est un projet important puisqu'il va relocaliser notre école sur quelque chose de plus centralisé, plus visible, mais surtout qui va se coordonner avec la culture, avec la recherche, avec la diplomatie, et puis surtout avec un maillage et une ouverture sur le monde. Je profite, Excellence, de vous remercier. Je sais que vous avez encore une année ici en Grèce, mais vous avez été un peu l'artisan aussi avec d'autres de cette recherche d'un site. Et ce qui vous sera présenté tout à l'heure, mesdames et messieurs, c'est aussi grâce à l'ambassadeur Estermann à qui on doit, puisqu'il a su convaincre les autorités suisses de se déplacer, de créer un nouveau siège, de travailler, d'être attentif. C'est pas simple, hein. Entre deux pays, trouver les bons mots, de dire que c'est un bon projet. Et pour tout ça, Excellence, merci beaucoup. Je voudrais aussi vous remercier pour ce que vous faites, parce que certes, il y a le mandat diplomatique, il y a pour nous l'archéologie et l'histoire et la recherche, mais vous avez aussi élargi un peu le périmètre. Je sais que vous êtes amoureux des trains, et on sait que la Grèce a été précurseur dans le domaine du ferroviaire. Il faut savoir qu'une des premières lignes mondiales de métro, elle s'est faite en Grèce, entre Kifissia et le Pirée. Et la Grèce, le Péloponnèse, a beaucoup de lignes historiques qui sont magnifiques. Le train redevient à la mode. Et Excellence, vous avez eu cette intelligence de croire à un projet. J'espère que vos successeurs continueront sur la même lancée pour qu'on puisse voir à terme ces endroits emblématiques que sont les gares et puis surtout ces petits trains qui puissent recirculer et de créer aussi une dynamique intéressante. La Suisse est très amoureuse des trains, mais la Grèce aussi a un patrimoine ferroviaire extraordinaire et grâce à vous, peut-être que ce sera aussi un partenariat supplémentaire, pas archéologique, ferroviaire et industriel. Merci beaucoup pour votre engagement, Excellence. Je termine par quelque chose qui me tient à cœur, mesdames et messieurs, et c'est aussi une lance que je rends en lien avec le ministre de l'Éducation cantonale. Je rappelle que les universités sont en main des cantons. Il y a quelques jours, l'université de Zurich a annoncé que et le Conseil d'État, implicitement, souhaitait supprimer le grec ancien au niveau des écoles du canton de Zurich. Pour comprendre le passé, il faut comprendre l'écriture, il faut comprendre le langage pour se projeter. Et cette suppression du grec instruit dans nos écoles, il y a une pétition qui circule. Je vous encourage à la signer, à se battre pour qu'on puisse maintenir l'apprivoisement de ces langues. Et c'est important parce que c'est des petites économies, mais qui en même temps vont faire des grands dégâts. Et je termine en disant que comprendre le passé, et je profite de faire un tout petit coup de pub pour notre directeur qui a écrit un livre sur les cités antiques qui ont été rasées. À quelques kilomètres d'ici, en Ukraine, on a rasé des cités, comme il y a 2500 ans, 3000 ans. Ça veut dire que le passé, il nous rejoint toujours. Et c'est pour ça qu'apprendre le grec ancien, comprendre l'histoire, c'est aussi peut-être éviter les erreurs du passé. Très belle soirée à vous toutes et tous et dans 50 ans. Merci beaucoup.
Excellences, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Directeur, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos nombreuses qualités et responsabilités, vous êtes de près ou de loin liés avec l'école d'archéologie suisse en Grèce. Et je suis très heureux maintenant de me retrouver devant vous à l'occasion de ce 50e anniversaire. Plein de choses ont été écrites sur l'archéologie, l'histoire, et vont continuer à l'être parce que c'est une découverte perpétuelle. Cette école n'est pas née simplement par une volonté publique d'avoir une école en Grèce. C'est une école publique, même si elle est rattachée à une fondation qui, elle, est privée, mais rattachée à l'Université de Lausanne. Elle est d'utilité publique et, quelque part, elle a un caractère public évident. Mais elle n'est pas née, et moi je suis là comme représentant des pouvoirs publics, elle n'est pas née simplement parce que quelqu'un dans une administration quelconque a dit « Tiens, si on faisait une école en Grèce ». Elle est née parce qu'il y a des gens compétents et passionnés et qui se sont investis pour que cette école existe. On est allé bien plus loin que la responsabilité publique qui est celle de transmettre la connaissance la plus large possible. Cette connaissance, eh bien, pour qu'elle soit vraiment large, en fait, elle doit être prise en main et par la volonté de ces gens compétents et passionnés. Et je pense que c'est ce qui fait toute la différence et c'est l'exemple que nous montre ce centre de formation suisse en Grèce. Après 50 ans, finalement, c'est ça. Et c'est mon premier mot est de rendre hommage à celles et ceux qui ont lancé, qui ont l'idée d'abord et qui ont lancé ça. Alors les pouvoirs publics ont suivi, tant mieux. Mais c'est important de se le rappeler. Et maintenant, eh bien, il y a, tout à l'heure, M. Fachard, je ne vais pas lui voler la politesse, a dit qu'il allait annoncer quelques projets. Il y a quelques projets. Après 50 ans, cette école, elle se relance un peu. Elle se relance par la même manière qu'à l'époque, c'est-à-dire par la compétence et aussi la passion de gens qui s'y investissent, qui font, certains par un contrat de travail, mais qui vont faire un peu plus, qui vont amener des idées, et les pouvoirs publics devront être là pour suivre. Mais ça ne suffira sans doute pas, en fonction de l'ambition de ces projets, et c'est là que naissent les partenariats avec des gens qui ont aussi cette passion, et qui ont aussi cet intérêt, et qui permettent que les choses se fassent, et qui permettent que les magnifiques projets qui vous seront présentés dans un instant puissent, en plus des pouvoirs publics, mais puissent voir le jour grâce aussi à un partenariat extrêmement fort. Bien, c'est tout ça qui fait que la formation, l'éducation, l'enseignement, c'est tout ça qui fait que ça peut être différent, ça peut être de qualité, ça peut être extraordinaire, et ça permet ensuite à des générations, sans doute, d'hériter de cette passion, de cet intérêt, et puis ensuite de faire de même, en voulant toujours aller un peu plus loin, en voulant continuer à faire des recherches, quelles qu'elles soient, dans tous les domaines. Ici, c'est l'archéologie, et je sais qu'on en a encore pour des siècles de découverte, de compréhension de ce qui s'est passé. Monsieur le Président, vous parliez il y a un instant de cette question, j'espère que ce n'est pas une décision définitive, mais cette question que se posent quelques universités en Suisse. Eh bien, ça m'inquiète aussi. Et nous nous les posons aussi en Suisse romande. C'est extraordinaire, mais on se les pose. On se les pose parce qu'il y a des modes, il y a des courants qui font que tout à coup, il y a moins d'intérêt un peu pour les langues anciennes. Eh bien, je suis persuadé que, et nous ne baisserons pas les bras, je ne suis pas persuadé, nous ne baisserons pas les bras, nous resterons attentifs et nous garantirons que ces langues soient enseignées à toutes celles et ceux qui le souhaitent. Mais aussi, nous avons besoin d'aide et nous comptons beaucoup sur le dynamisme de cette école pour donner le goût de la découverte de ces langues anciennes à des nouvelles générations. Alors, aujourd'hui, c'est le 50e. Pour le prochain 50e, je ne serai plus là, mais je souhaite en tout cas une très longue vie à cette magnifique école d'archéologie suisse en Grèce. Merci de votre attention.
This is the slide that I had to change for Pascal Broulis with the petition. So please sign it in order to save the teaching of ancient Greek in the canton of Zurich. The report. As mentioned earlier, this is a very special occasion for us. Indeed, in 2025, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece. This is the occasion to briefly review the past, the founding vision, the milestones, and also to pay tribute to the key figures, founders, researchers, staff who shaped this organization. It is also an opportunity to highlight the present by showcasing current projects, collaborations, research, and outreach initiatives which are at the core of our activities. Finally, it will be an opportunity to inspire the future by summarizing our main initiatives, I think, for the next 10, 25, 50 years, with an eye on emerging fields and technologies in archaeology, as well as a reshaped and more pronounced presence in Athens, thanks to a groundbreaking initiative, which I will present at the end of my presentation. You'll have to be patient. The first excavations were made possible thanks to the joint involvement of Ioannis Papadimitriou, then General Director of Antiquities, Professor Lili Kail from the University of Fribourg, and Karl Scheffold, whom I mentioned before, professor at the University of Basel, who became the first director of the Swiss Excavations. Initially, the Swiss archaeological presence in Eretria was an archaeological mission, an excavation. But a decade later, it took a more institutional turn. Professor Karl Scheffold had the political wisdom and vision to wait until the fall of the military junta before he filed a formal request with the Greek authorities to obtain the title of School of Archaeology, thus requiring a permanent scientific presence in Greece. And this request was accepted by the Greek government in 1975, exactly 50 years ago. Karl Scheffold's mandate as director was marked by the first great discoveries and excavations in the West Quarter and the sanctuary of Apollo Daphnephoros, which was graciously disposed, by the way, by the Archaeological Society at Athens. Now we can mention in particular the excavation of the first geometric temples of Apollo and the Héron by Claude Bérard, which you see here in the picture, and the excavations by Clemens Krause at the West Gate, the Agora, and the Canal. Scheffold was then succeeded by Rudi Moosbrugger and Franz Georg Mayer between 1976 and 1979, and these years are marked by the discovery of the House of the Mosaics in 1977 by Pierre Ducret, you recognize here on this great picture to the right. Clemens Krause became director from 1979 to 1982, and then Pierre Ducret, again, was director from 1982 to 2006. These are 24 years, almost half of the history of the school, which were marked by significant reforms in governance and management, with the creation of the school's foundation board in 1982 and the expansion of financial resources due to the successful fundraising that Pierre was able to manage. Fieldwork continued in many sectors of the ancient city, including the anastylosi of the house with the mosaics, as well as the new excavations in the Apollo sanctuary, the Acropolis, and the Sebastion. The last years of his mandate were marked by an expansion of interest outside Eretria proper in the large territory of the polis, including the first survey and excavations at Amarynthos. And you can see here Pierre on the first foundations in 2007. And I like these pictures. You can see Pierre also with Denis Knopfler in Paris at the Académie des Inscriptions et Belles-Lettres. Another picture by Pierre with Professor John Ma from Columbia University. And another picture of Pierre with Pascal Couchepin, who was the former president of Switzerland, and he became president of our board too. And a great picture up left, and you recognize Pierre Ducret with the main efforts of Eubea, Petros Themelis, Andreomenu, and you can see Petros Kaligas as well. So these pictures show Pierre's, I think, impact here in the school. Pierre was succeeded by Professor Karl Reber at the University of Lausanne from 2007 and 2021. And his time is marked by new excavations, the Roman baths, the Sando plot, the gymnasium, and most importantly, the Artemision at Amarynthos, with the discovery of the first foundations of the Stoa, followed a decade later by the ultimate proof of the identification of the sanctuary. Karl Reber was very successful in leading the large-scale open-area excavations at the site between 2012 and 2020 with great success. And I'm happy to say that he's here tonight on the first row, and you'll see him later over a glass of wine. More than ever, we're immensely grateful to the Greek Ministry of Culture and the efforts of Antiquities with whom we collaborate. In particular, the effort of EUBEA, represented tonight by its Deputy Director, Dr. Dimitrios Christodoulou. Scientific hospitality and collaborations are key in our field, and it's obviously a great pleasure and privilege to be able to conduct excavations in Greece. We're also grateful to the Swiss National Science Foundation, a steady supporter of the school since 1964. The State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, the SERI, Swiss universities, we mentioned them before, and in particular the University of Lausanne, which serves as the school headquarters as well as my chair. And of course, the support of the Canton de Vaud. Since 1982, the school is also supported by several foundations. The Sando Family Philanthropic Foundation, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, the Kikpe Foundation here in Athens, the Isaac Dreyfus Bernheim Stiftung, the Keramika Stiftung in Basel, the Société Académique Vaudoise, the Fondation Théodore Lagonico. And this year, we're happy to announce a new partnership with the Evangelos Pistiolis Foundation, on which I will elaborate later. From the outset, the Swiss School has offered a supportive environment from professors, researchers, and students from every Swiss university. And this educational initiative is at the core of our mission and will remain so in the next 50 years. Swiss archaeologists are active in all parts of the world, from Sudan, Mali, Italy, Turkmenistan to South America. But the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece remains the only permanent Swiss archaeological mission located outside Switzerland, with a permanent staff and a permanent scientific presence. The fact that the only permanent Swiss archaeological presence is in Greece says a lot, I think, about the strong and deep relations between our two countries. Philhellenism has deep roots in Switzerland, going back to the outbreak of the war in independence. Charles Pictet de Rochemont and Jean-Gabriel Hénard actively supported the war effort by leading a strong movement in Switzerland. They were close friends of Ioannis Kapodistrias, whom they had known for years leading up to the Treaty of Vienna, where Kapodistrias, special envoy of the Tsar, defended Swiss neutrality and actively contributed to the delimitation of Switzerland's modern borders, including the cantons of Vaud and Geneva. Kapodistrias received honorary citizenship from Lausanne and Geneva. And a bus celebrates his memory where I grew up, here in Lausanne, to the right. By the way, sponsored by Russia and not Greece, but that's another story. And a few weeks ago, another long-awaited statue was erected in the prestigious Parc des Bastions in Geneva, in the courtyard of the Palais Hénard, inaugurated by the canton and city of Geneva, the Greek council in Geneva, and the mayor of Geneva, Christina Kitsos, who is here tonight, and who is the first mayor of Geneva of Greek descent. Today, in Switzerland, neo-Philhellenism has taken new forms. Greek culture and language are vibrant, and each year approximately 500,000 Swiss citizens visit Greece, primarily for its rich cultural heritage. The ambassador will not contradict me, I think, if I say that the Swiss School plays a significant role in our bilateral relations, especially in terms of scientific diplomacy, a concept officially recognized by the Swiss government, as you can see here on this official flyer. In 2024, we were happy to welcome the visit of Federal Councillor Guy Parmelin, who visited our excavations in Eretria and Amarynthos. And his department supervises the SERI, which is the State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, that supports the school. Now, science remains at the core of our mission. and perhaps the largest scientific output and capital of the Swiss presence in Eretria is, I would say, found in its scientific publications. To date, 26 volumes published in the Eretria series from 1964 to 2026, the latest by Tamara Saggini, who will shortly be on stage here to present the excavations on the Artemision and Amarynthos. And I'm happy to say that more books are in the pipeline, and that's what remains. Besides excavations and conservation efforts, we're committed to public engagement through exhibitions, lectures, and digital platforms that bring archaeology to a wider audience. The film, Artemis, The Lost Temple, has won the prize for Best Archaeological Film at the 12th Agon Festival last year in Athens in 2024. And this documentary, which retraces the Greek-Swiss excavations at Amarynthos, won the award for its outstanding contribution to archaeology. It's directed by a very happy Sebastian Reichenbach, as you can see here on the right, and it was produced by Klimimage and co-produced by the Swiss TV, Arte TV, and with the collaboration of the Swiss School. And you can see this movie on Arte TV, and according to the latest numbers, it has been viewed over 1.2 million times. In collaboration with the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, we have developed an educational outreach program aimed at local schools. Our collaborator, Christina Paroni, who is here tonight, is doing remarkable work by leading educational programs in schools and on-site for hundreds of young children, as well as an entire new Greek website with school activities and video capsules for professors to follow. The Swiss School has deep ties in Eretria and Amarynthos going back to the 1960s. These ties are not only connected to science, they're also deeply human. And I would like to thank all our Greek friends, the Greek families who welcome us in their homes, the local workers whose hands and hearts have shaped every excavation in the last 50 years. We all remember the shared meals and drinks, the long days in the sun, the quiet moments of discovery, and the friendship that has lasted a lifetime. We're also very grateful to the authorities of Eretria, and in 2015, the city of Eretria named the central platia after the Swiss School, the Platia Helvetikis Scholis. But in 2024, the Swiss School received, I would say, a very cool prize to celebrate its advancement in the third National League, Rama Ethniki, the Amarynthos Football Club, dedicated a special jersey to Artemis, Amaryssia. Pretty cool. Even adding the Swiss School logo on its jersey. And I had the honor to attend the kickoff ceremony with my son Phil, who loved it, and we all received the very cool jersey. And this might be my top achievement as director, and it will be hard to repeat in the following 20 years. This brings us to the activities of the school. We had a great year, very dynamic year, with an excavation at the Antikythera wreck, Aegina and Amarynthos, a new project in the harbor of Eretria, and then I would say our flagship project in Amarynthos at the Artemision. In order to present the excavation underwater conducted at Antikythera, it's a synedrasia between the Greek Hellenic Ministry of Culture and the University of Geneva. We have Angeliki Simosi, who is a former effer and who will present the results of the 2024 excavation. Angeliki, the floor is yours.
Καλησπέρα σας. Είναι χαρά και τιμή για μένα να είμαι ανάμεσα σε τόσους πολλούς και καλούς φίλους και συνεργάτες και ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ την Ελβετική Αρχαιολογική Σχολή και ιδιαίτερα τον διευθυντή της, τον κύριο Sylvian Fachard, για την άψογη συνεργασία όλα αυτά τα χρόνια σε 3, όχι μία, σε 3 συνεργατικές έρευνες, στα Αντικύθερα, στην Αμάρυνθο και στην Ερέτρια. Μετά την ανακάλυψη του ναυαγίου το 1900 από σημειακούς σφουγγαράδες, και τις έρευνες με τα μέσα της εποχής εκείνης που έφεραν στο φως ανεκτήμητα έργα τέχνης και το περίφημο μηχανισμό των Αντικυθήρων, σήμερα στο Εθνικό Αρχαιολογικό Μουσείο, το 1976 μια σύντομη έρευνα έγινε από τον Ζακ Ιβ Κουστό στο πλαίσιο μιας επίσκεψης του διάσημου εξερευνητή στη χώρα μας, που έθεσε ως προτεραιότητά του να περιηγηθεί υποβρυχίως στα μυστικά του διασημότερου αρχαίου ναυαγίου στον κόσμο. Το ερευνητικό πρόγραμμα επιστροφής στα Αντικύθερα ξεκίνησε το 2012 από την καθήλη αρμόδια εφορία εναλίων αρχαιοτήτων του Υπουργείου Πολιτισμού, με αφορμή μία έκθεση με τίτλο «Το ναυάγιο των Αντικυθήρων, το φορτίο, η θησαυρή, ο μηχανισμός», που έλαβε χώρα στο πρώτο μουσείο της πατρίδας μας, καθήλωσε το κοινό λόγω του τεράστιου ενδιαφέροντος που παρουσίασε, μεταφέρθηκε στη Βασιλεία της Ελβετίας και στη συνέχεια στο Μουσείο της Απαγορευμένης Πόλης στο Πεκίνο. Το πρώτο πενταετές πρόγραμμα 2012-2017 και 2019 έγινε σε συνεργασία με το Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute της Μασαχουσέτης, ενώ το δεύτερο ερευνητικό πενταετές πρόγραμμα 2021-2025 διενεργείται σε συνεργασία με την Ελβετική Αρχαιολογική Σχολή στην Ελλάδα, υπό τη διεύθυνση του καθηγητού του Πανεπιστημίου της Γενέβης, Λόρενς Μπάουμερ, και εμού της Ιδίας. Η έρευνα συνεχίζεται ως σήμερα, αφού κάθε χρονιά τα αποτελέσματά της μας εκπλήσουν, απασχολώντας ένα δυναμικό 40 περίπου ατόμων, αποτελούμενο από Έλληνες και ξένους εξειδικευμένους επιστήμονες, καταδιόμενους όλων των απαιτούμενων σε μια υποβρύχια αρχαιολογική έρευνα ειδικοτήτων, αλλά και βαθυδυτών, ανάμεσα στους οποίους και οι δίτες της Μονάδας Υποβρυχίων Αποστολών του Λιμενικού Σώματος της Ελληνικής Ακτοφυλακής. Το πλοίο των Αντικυθήρων είναι ένα φορτηγό σκάφος μία ολκάς, μήκους περί τα 40 μέτρα, πλάτους περί τα 14 μέτρα, με μέγιστο βάθος κήτους 6,5 μέτρα και χωρητικότητα 230 έως 250 τόνους. Βλέπετε εδώ ένα χάρτη της θάλασσας της Μεσογείου, όπου φαίνεται η πυκνότητα των αγαλμάτων που έχουν βγει από το βυθό της Μεσογείου, τόσο στο Αιγαίο όσο και στην Αδριατική και ακόμα μέχρι και την Ισπανία. Βλέπετε κάτω, εδώ, συγγνώμη, έκανα λάθος. Πώς πάει πίσω λίγο, με αυτόν τον τρόπο. Εντάξει, ναι, το βρήκα. Λοιπόν, στα δεξιά έχουμε αναπαράσταση του πλοίου των Αντικυθήρων, ενώ στα αριστερά μας είναι ένα δεύτερο πλοίο που έχει αποκαλυφθεί στις ακτές της Αφρικής, στη Μάντια. Βλέπετε εδώ τους δύο κύκλους με τα ναυάγια και το ναυάγιο των Αντικυθήρων. Αναπαράσταση του πλοίου. Η χρονολόγηση με ραδιενεργό άνθρακα 24 τοποθετεί χρονικά τα ξύλα του πλοίου στο έτος 220 π.Χ. με απόκλιση περίπου 40 ετών, και η χρονολογία βύθισής του είναι περίπου στο 60 π.Χ. και υποδηλώνει ότι το συγκεκριμένο πλοίο ήταν πολυταξιδευμένο και παλιό. Η τέταρτη κατά σειρά αποστολή του 2024 στο ναυάγιο πραγματοποιήθηκε μεταξύ 17 Μαΐου και 20 Ιουνίου, ενώ οι εξαιρετικά καλές καιρικές συνθήκες, σπάνιο φαινόμενο για αυτή τη θαλάσσια περιοχή, μας επέτρεψαν σημαντική πρόοδο των εργασιών στο ερευνητικό πεδίο. Από την ανασκαφική έρευνα προέκυψαν ευρήματα μεγάλης αρχαιολογικής σημασίας, μεταξύ όμως των οποίων κυριαρχεί η ανακάλυψη σημαντικού τμήματος του κήτους του πλοίου. Βλέπετε πάνω στο κέντρο της εικόνας ένα τμήμα από το κήτος του πλοίου, και όσο καθαρίζει η ανασκαφή, όσο αναρροφάται η άμμος, βλέπετε εδώ κάτω ένα δεύτερο κομμάτι. Η υποβρύχια έρευνα συνεχίστηκε στις περιοχές που είχαν διανοιχτεί αρχαιολογικές τομές τα δύο προηγούμενα έτη, το 2022 και 2023, και δόθηκε ιδιαίτερη έμφαση στα ανασκαφικά τετράγωνα ε130 και 131 που βρίσκονται σε βάθος 42 μέτρα και ήταν πλούσια σε ευρήματα. Εδώ, πέρα της πληθώρας της κεραμικής, αποτελούμενης κυρίως από τμήματα αμφορέων, ήρθαν στο φως και πολλά κομμάτια μαρμάρινων γλυπτών, όπως ένα υπερφυσικό κεφάλι ανδρικής μορφής, στεφανωμένης με κλαδί αμπέλου, που παριστάνει τον ημίθιο Ηρακλή και πιθανόν ανήκει στο ακέφαλο άγαλμα του Ηρακλή τύπου Φαρνέζε, νούμερο 5742, σήμερα στο Εθνικό Αρχαιολογικό Μουσείο. Βλέπετε εδώ το κεφάλι όπως έχει βγει από την θάλασσα, και μετά τη συντήρηση είναι εμφανές το κλαδί της αμπέλου που στεφανώνει τον Ηρακλή. Ακόμα έχουμε και μία βάση ενός ακόμα γάλματος. Σώζονται τα δύο κάτω άκρα μιας ανδρικής μορφής, παρόμοιο του οποίου είχε ανελκυστεί το 1900 και βρίσκεται και αυτό στο Εθνικό Αρχαιολογικό Μουσείο και παριστάνει τον ήρωα Αχιλλέα ή τον Οδυσσέα. Βλέπετε κάτω δεξιά το άγαλμα αυτό και πάνω αριστερά τον Ηρακλή. Φωτορεαλιστική απεικόνιση της τομής με όλα τα κομμάτια αγαλμάτων, είτε από χαλκό είτε από μάρμαρο, που έχουν βρεθεί, και τα δύο σημαντικά αυτά αγάλματα. Το 2024 λοιπόν συνεχίστηκε η ανασκαφική έρευνα με τη διάνοιξη τομών, από όπου ανελκύστηκε πλούσιο αρχαιολογικό υλικό, 300 περίπου αντικείμενα, ανάμεσα στα οποία αναφέρονται τουλάχιστον 21 θαύσματα μαρμάρου, αυτή είναι η ανασκαφική τομή, που ανήκουν σε αγάλματα. Χαρακτηριστικά λοιπόν είναι χέρια με τα δάχτυλα που συνανίκουν σε αυτά. Βλέπετε τον καρπό και τα δάχτυλα που κολλάν στο χέρι, τμήματα από πόδια και δάχτυλα ποδιών, αναδιπλούμενες πτυχές σηματίων και δύο μαρμάρινες κεφαλές. Περισυλλέθηκαν επίσης εξαρτήματα από το ίδιο το κήτος του πλοίου, όπως φύλλα μολύβδου από την εξωτερική επένδυσή του, που κάλυπταν όλο το ύφαλο κομμάτι του πλοίου έως την ίσαλη επιφάνειά του, ώστε να αποφεύγεται η διάβρωση του ξύλου από τους θαλάσσιους οργανισμούς, και χάλκινη ύλη, δηλαδή καρφιά και ξυλόκαρφα. Οι χάλκινοι σφυρίλατοι ύλοι διαθέτουν σφαιρικές και ημισφαιρικές κεφαλές και χρησιμοποιούνταν για την καθήλωση των ομέων πάνω στο πέτσωμα. Για τη συναρμολόγηση του πετσώματος ανοίγονταν διαμπερείς οπαίες, στις οποίες έμπαιναν επιμήκη ξύλινα στοιχεία, τα ξυλόκαρφα, στα οποία προσαρμόζονταν τα χάλκινα καρφιά, έτσι ώστε να προστατεύεται το πέτσωμα του σκάφους από τη διάβρωση του μετάλλου. Και βλέπουμε εδώ τα φύλλα μολύβδου που καλύπτουν εξωτερικά το πέτσωμα του πλοίου, τα ξυλόκαρφα της καβίλες, τους στένοντες εδώ, και εδώ βλέπουμε πως την ναυπηγική της εποχής εκείνης, δηλαδή του τρίτου-δεύτερου αιώνα π.Χ., πρώτα είναι οι τρόπεις, μετά έρχονται το πέτσωμα του πλοίου και στη συνέχεια οι νομείς. Αυτή η τεχνική λέγεται self first, δηλαδή πρώτα το πέτσωμα του πλοίου. Στην ίδια ανασκαφική τομή που έφτασε στο βάθος των 48 μέτρων, αποκαλύφθηκαν αρκετά ανθρώπινα οστά, γεγονός που επιβεβαιώνει την ύπαρξη πέρα του πληρώματος και επιβατών επί του πλοίου, ενώ αδιαφιλονίκητα έχει διαπιστωθεί και η παρουσία γυναικών σε αυτό από αναλύσεις DNA που έχουν γίνει στα οστά και από την ανέβρεση κοσμημάτων όπως δαχτυλιδιών, εδώ είναι τα οστά, και σκουλαρικιών. Παράλληλα, η έβρεση πολλών τμήματων πύληνων αγκίων, τόσο μεταφορικών όσο και καθημερινής χρήσης, για την πόση και τη βρώση των επιβαινόντων, όσο και γυάλινων αγκίων, εμπλουτίζουν τις γνώσεις μας για το φορτίο του πλοίου και τον τρόπο διαβίωσης μέσα σε αυτό. Με βάση λοιπόν τους τύπους των αμφορέων και τις περιοχές προέλευσής τους, μπορούμε να γνωρίζουμε και τους σταθμούς, δηλαδή τα λιμάνια που πέρασε το πλοίο. Η πορεία του λοιπόν πρέπει να ξεκίνησε από την Έφεσο και συνέχισε στην Κο, τη Ρόδο, με τελικό προορισμό την Κάτω Ιταλία. Και εδώ τμήματα από τα γυάλινα αγκία. Όμως το πιο σημαντικό έβριμα της έρευνας του 24 είναι αυτό το δομικό μέρος του κήτους του πλοίου που συνδυάζει σημαντικά ναυπηγικά χαρακτηριστικά. Βλέπετε εδώ από μεμονωμένα ξύλα που έχουν ανελκυστεί στο παρελθόν το 1976 από τις έρευνες του Κουστό και από την έρευνα του 2024. Το ξύλο δεν έχει ενελκυστεί ακόμα. Βρέθηκε λοιπόν ένα τμήμα των υφάλων του πλοίου συμπεριλαμβανομένου ικανού αριθμού συνδεδεμένων ξύλων, σανίδων που σχηματίζουν το εξωτερικό περίβλημα, το πέτσωμα με τις εγκάρσεις εσωτερικές ενισχύσεις τους νομής. Από τα μέχρι σήμερα στοιχεία, όπως προαναφέρθηκε, τα μαδέρια του πετσώματος προέρχονται από ξύλο φτελιάς και είπαμε χρονολογούνται το 220 π.Χ. Ομοίως στην επιφάνεια των μαδεριών που αποκαλύφθηκαν το 2024. Υπάρχουν χάλκινα καρφιά με κυκλικές κεφαλές και σώζεται σε αρκετά καλή κατάσταση η μολύβδινη προστατευτική επίστρωση του κήτους. Για το λόγο αυτό αποτελεί αδύρυτη ανάγκη στην έρευνα του 2025 να ανελκυστεί το τμήμα αυτό του ξύλου ώστε να διευκρινιστούν και άλλα χαρακτηριστικά της ναυπηγικής του πλοίου που τώρα δεν είναι τόσο σαφή, όπως η επιφάνειες επαφής των μαδεριών με τις παραλληλόγραμμες κοιλότητες, τις εντορμίες, αλλά και τους ξύλινους συνδέσμους, δηλαδή τους τόρμους για τη σύνδεση δύο επάλληλων μαδεριών. Παρατηρήθηκε επίσης ότι τα μαδέρια του πετσώματος έχουν ικανό πάχος και η κατανομή των ομέων είναι πυκνή, γεγονός που μας παραπέμπει σε ένα πλοίο βαριάς κατασκευής για τη μεταφορά μεγάλων φορτίων. Η ανέβρεση του ξύλινου αυτού τμήματος, του πετσώματος του πλοίου, δηλώνει για μια ακόμα φορά τη μεθοδολογία κατασκευής του, όπως σας προανέφερα, το self-first δηλαδή, πρώτα το κέλυφος, που κυριαρχεί στην ναυπηγική των ελληνιστικών και ρωμαϊκών χρόνων, σε αντίθεση με τη μεθοδολογία ναυπήγησης που εφαρμόζεται σε μεταγενέστερη εποχή. Χάρη σε αυτό το έβριμα, η ακριβής θέση του πλοίου στο βυθό και ο προσανατολισμός του μας είναι πλέον γνωστά. Τα νέα ναυπηγικά δεδομένα που ανακτήθηκαν με την έρευνα και οι εκτενείς εργαστηριακές αναλύσεις που βρίσκονται εν εξελίξη από τα δείγματα ξύλου που έχουν ανελκυστεί, αναμένεται να φέρουν στο φως άγνωστα μέχρι τώρα στοιχεία, όπως τα είδη του ξύλου που επιλέχθηκαν για την κατασκευή διάφορων τμήματων του πλοίου, η ακριβής ηλικία του πλοίου και πολύ πιθανό και ο τόπος ναυπήγησής του. Για τη διεξαγωγή μιας τόσο απαιτητικής ανασκαφικής έρευνας σε μεγάλο βάθος, πάνω από 45 μέτρα, και σε ικανή απόσταση από τη βραχώδη και κρημνώδη ακτή, εφαρμόστηκαν πολλές τεχνικές. Ο σχεδιασμός και η ανατροφοδότηση στοιχείων υποβοηθήθηκαν από τη βάση δεδομένων και το σύστημα γεωγραφικών πληροφοριών GIS που δημιουργήθηκαν κατά τα προηγούμενα έτη. Τηλεχειριζόμενα οχήματα της Ουμπλό Exploration και της ομάδας υποβρυχίων αποστολών του λιμενικού σώματος χρησιμοποιήθηκαν για την παρακολούθηση και το συντονισμό όλων των υποθαλάσσιων επιχειρήσεων σε πραγματικό χρόνο και για τη δημιουργία ψηφιακών τρισδιάστατων μοντέλων επιλεγμένων περιοχών. Τις τρισδιάστατα μοντέλα των ανελκυστέντων αντικειμένων δημιουργήθηκαν χάρη σε ένα ειδικό σκάνερ που αναπτύχθηκε ειδικά για το ερευνητικό πρόγραμμα από το Ερευνητικό Κέντρο της Ορολογοποιίας Ουμπλό. μια εξειδικευμένη μεθοδολογία επανδρωμένης υποβρύχιας επιφανειακής έρευνας εφαρμόστηκε σε όλη την περιοχή του ναυαγίου, που εκτείνεται σε 2 διακριτές θέσεις συγκεντρώσεως ευρημάτων σε απόσταση μία από την άλλη 200 μέτρα, και στο εξής θα ονομάζονται περιοχές Α και Β. Στόχος της επιφανειακής αυτής έρευνας ήταν να ανακτηθούν όλα τα υπολείμματα της χρηστικής κεραμικής και του φορτίου του πλοίου που δεν είχαν περισυλλεγεί προηγουμένως. Η απόκτηση και η χρήση νέων συσκευών κατάδυσης μεικτών αερίων κλειστού κυκλώματος βοήθησε αποτελεσματικά στην ασφάλεια των καταδύσεων και στη μεγαλύτερη παραμονή του εξειδικευμένου προσωπικού των βαθυδυτών στο βυθό. Επίσης εφαρμόστηκε νέα μέθοδος υποβρύχιας ανασκαφής περιορισμένης παρέμβασης που αποδίδει τα μέγιστα δυνατά αποτελέσματα. Ανασκάφηκαν επιλεγμένες ζώνες εμβαδού 2 μέτρων επί 2 μέτρων και συλλέχθηκαν όλα τα εξαγόμενα ειζήματα, τα οποία μελετήθηκαν προκαταρτικά σε ειδικό μικρό αρχαιολογικό εργαστήριο που έχει εγκατασταθεί στον οικισμό του ποταμού Αντικυθήρων, επιτρέποντας με τον τρόπο αυτό ακριβείς στρωματογραφικές παρατηρήσεις, όπου διακρίνεται η πολυμορφία της σύστασης του βυθού μεταξύ των 2 αρχαιολογικών θέσεων Α και Β. Επιπλέον, η ανάλυση φωτόλιθων, η ταυτοποίηση ρητινών, πρόκειται για ένα είδος μαστίχας που περιέβαλαν εσωτερικά τα τυχώματα των αφορέων για λόγους τεχανοποίησής τους, ώστε να δέχονται και τα υγρά προϊόντα όπως το κρασί και το λάδι, καθώς και υλικών καλαφατίσματος που εντοπίστηκαν πάνω στα μικρά τμήματα των ξύλων του πλοίου, παρέχουν νέες πληροφορίες από τις μέχρι τώρα γνωστές για το πλοίο και το φορτίο του. Η δεύτερη περιοχή ενδιαφέροντος, η περιοχή Β, διερευνήθηκε λόγω συγκέντρωσης κεραμικής, κυρίως αμφορέων ίδιου τύπου και προέλευσης με αυτούς της περιοχής Α, ενώ ήρθε στο φως ένα ακόμα νέο στοιχείο. Στην περιοχή Β αποκαλύφθηκε ένας ακόμα τύπος αμφορέα, αυτή τη φορά χιακής προέλευσης, γεγονός που θέτει ερωτήματα ως προς την ύπαρξη και ενός δεύτερου σκάφους, ίσως συνοδού του πρώτου. Αυτή όμως την εικασία μόνο η έρευνα μπορεί με ασφάλεια να τεκμηριώσει. Κύριοι χορηγοί του ερευνητικού προγράμματος είναι το Ίδρυμα Κατερίνης Λασκαρίδη, η Ελβετική Ορολογοπία Ουμπλό, το Ίδρυμα Νηρέως Research, η Κοσμοτέ, ενώ ευχαριστίες οφείλονται στην Υπουργό Πολιτισμού, την κυρία Αλίνα Μενδώνη, για τη συνεχή και ουσιαστική στήριξή της στη διεξαγωγή του ερευνητικού προγράμματος, και στο Δήμαρχο Kythyrων και Αντικυθήρων, κύριο Ευστράτιο Χαρχαλάκη, αλλά και στους κατοίκους του νησιού. Θερμές ευχαριστίες στην επόπτρια της έρευνας από την πλευρά της Εφορίας Εναλίων Αρχαιοτήτων, την κυρία Κατερίνη Ταγωνίδου, που χρόνια τώρα συνοδεύει τις έρευνές μας, στον κύριο Αλέξανδρο Σωτηρίου, που βρίσκεται ανάμεσά μας και στις πλάτες του οποίου πραγματικά γίνεται η έρευνα αυτή. Είναι ο τεχνικός υπεύθυνος και οργανωτής της έρευνας. Και θα ήθελα να αναφερθώ και στον Γιάννη Μπιτσάκη, φυσικό του Πανεπιστημίου της Γενέβης, που είναι η ψυχή της έρευνας και οργανώνει όλο το οικονομικό budget της έρευνας αυτής. Τέλος, θα ήθελα να αναφερθώ σε μία έκθεση που έγινε το 2024, τον Νοέμβριο του 2024, στο Ίδρυμα Κατερίνης Λασκαρίδη, και διήρκησε μέχρι το Μάρτιο του 2025. Είχε σαν τίτλο «Το ναυάγιο των Αντικυθήρων, 124 χρόνια υποβρύχιας αρχαιολογικής έρευνας». Εγκαινιάστηκε από την Υπουργό Πολιτισμού κυρία Αλίνα Μενδώνη. Η έκθεση αποτελείται από τις εξής ενότητες: το πλοίο και η εξαρτία του, η διαβίωση στο πλοίο και η ναυαγή, το φορτίο του πλοίου. Ευχόμαστε η νέα ερευνητική περίοδος του 25, που θα ξεκινήσει στις 15 Μαΐου, να είναι το ίδιο σημαντική και καρποφόρα με τις προηγούμενες. Εδώ η ομάδα, χωρίς τις στολές, εμένα δεν με βλέπετε, γιατί είμαι αυτή που παίρνω τη φωτογραφία. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
από τα βάθη της θάλασσας, στην κορυφή του βουνού, από τα Antikythera στην καρδιά του Σαρονικού, from Antikythera to the heart of the Saronic Gulf, and also a step closer to Euboea that we actually can see from our site of excavation, at least on good days, with the Mount Ochi above Charistos behind the Attic Peninsula. I have the pleasure to present tonight our collaborative work of the Swiss School and the Effort of Antiquities of Piraeus and Islands, and specifically we're working with Stella Chrysoulaki, Leonidas Vokotopoulos, Sofia Michalopoulou, and Jérôme André, and I want to thank everyone for this great collaboration and all the effort we're doing on Aegina. Last year, we did both a survey around Helanion Oros in order to understand the setting of this peculiar or specific site in its landscape, but also excavation for 4 weeks in September. And I want to thank everyone who was part of our fieldwork in 2024 and who made all of these results possible. Now, during the survey, we focused on 2 different areas to the west and east of the mountain, and research in these 2 areas led to the discovery of 2 new, so far unknown, prehistoric sites. In the west, so on the side towards Peloponnese, we continued research just above the area we focused on in 2023, a small plateau, inland plateau with an old olive grove, which also produced a quite significant scatter of lithic tools. In 2024, we worked on the slopes and the ridge above, where we have an important scatter of material from quite recent, from medieval to more recent past, which belongs certainly to a few installations that are above, on top of the ridge. But during extensive survey that we're doing together with intensive survey, of course, it is a very difficult and rugged landscape, and still it's surprisingly to have actually in almost every single unit we're walking pottery and other finds. It's quite not what we expected initially. Now, we found a new prehistoric site on this rocky volcanic outcrop, a very typical site actually for sites of this specific period, which is at the end of the Neolithic and the very beginning of the early Bronze Age, a very typical location for the Aegean, a site that is attested through, though very fragmented, but still significant and characteristic pottery and a lot of lithic tools. On the other side of this area, we identified a quarry area with a lot of still unfinished or broken millstones of andesite, a volcanic rock, which is very common in southern Aegina, as well as many traces of quarrying. Now, this remains, they might be of a quite recent past, but the discovery of a scatter of black glazed pottery as well as lithic finds indicate that this area was frequented already quite earlier. And this material used for millstones since prehistory, that is one of the export products of Aegina. In the eastern part of Mount Oros, we covered a quite large area, which is around the late Mycenaean fortified site of Megali Koriffi, from the abandoned hamlet of Kanakides towards the sea, but also on the slopes in direction of Helanion Oros, where we discovered a new diachronic site, which obviously, as you can see in some of the ceramic samples, starts already in the Mycenaean period with tripod legs and painted pottery. Now, this is significant because it clearly shows that these 2 mountaintop sites here, you see actually this area on the gentle slope and the terraced areas from Megali Koriffi with the fortification wall in the foreground and the very impressive Helanion Oros on this, in this volcanic landscape. And it's very significant to have actually other sites that show that these are not isolated peak sites, but that they're actually set in a cultural landscape of the late Bronze Age. And of course, we have to mention Lazarides, which is just 2 kilometers to the north of Helanion Oros, outside our survey area, which is excavated systematically by the University of Athens. But with this in mind, now to the mountaintop itself, with the Chapel of Analypsis at its very top, where we excavated several different parts throughout the last 4 years. But in 2024, we focused on this area to the north, so in the lower part of the photo of the church, where we found undisturbed layers of the late Helladic 3C period. It is an area, as you can see on this sketch, from the 1930s, which was not touched by the earlier German excavations, and therefore the structures are still in situ and undisturbed. This is the area, so now with a view towards the Aegean Sea. And until 2023, so we already identified this small one-room, at least so far, building with a nicely preserved late Helladic 3C deposit. Now in 2024, we extended our research towards the west with a new trench in order to understand the setting of this structure, but also we continued work inside this building towards the western limit of the building, where we discovered more of this destruction deposit from the very beginning of the late Helladic 3C period. And you can see now we have along the 3 preserved walls storage vases that are nicely preserved, as well as by now at least 7 tripod cooking pots that are almost completely preserved, indicating that this is certainly related to domestic activities at the very, very end of the Mycenaean period after the collapse of the palaces. Probably a kind of a refuge site and not related to the cultic activities that we otherwise already knew from this site. Here another impression from the 2024 excavations with a view towards Aegina Colonna, from where maybe some of the people took refuge here in these unsecured times. Under the floor of this building, under the floor level and not related to this destruction layer, we also found the grave, which is the first grave ever found on top of Mount Hellanionoros, which is an adult in a very crouched position with a child that were buried here, with a few finds that indicate clearly also a late Bronze Age date. So this is under the floor and under this destruction deposit that has already been excavated the previous years. So in the trench where we extended our research, we were lucky enough to find another interior area, although less well preserved, but still with storage vases in situ that clearly show that this is not an isolated building, but it is actually part of a larger complex of several buildings. And furthermore, towards the north downslopes, we also discovered a series of walls of different periods that show that this is also not isolated in time. It's not as short-lived as one might have expected for such a refuge site, but actually that occupation was here for a series of occupational phases. And this really reminds those structures on the southwestern part of the slope that have already been excavated and drawn in the 1930s, and that we cleaned this year again for photogrammetric documentation and further research. They're just located above a short stretch of a Cyclopean fortification, and I think this really makes it clear that we have here a short-lived refuge settlement at the end of the Mycenaean period. Now, the other aim, of course, of our project was also to identify traces of the cult of Zeus Hellanios that is attested in the monumental structures further down the slope. And of course, this is a difficult task, as we have on the very top of the mountain the chapel, and it is, as you can see, it's built on ancient foundations, and also in its wall, ancient blocks are reused. Still, downslopes covering all the area with the Mycenaean finds, we actually find the traces of the cult activities on the top, and specifically burnt animal bones that also covered not only the parts that we excavated in previous years, but also in the area of the new trench in 2024, Trench 10. And the presence of large Corinthian tiles, as well as these architectural fragments that in marble that have been documented by John Camp and that are unfortunately lost today, they clearly indicate that there was a built structure actually on the mountaintop during the first millennium BCE. And this is of course, on a place with such a view, this is a thing that interests us a lot, is that this is not an isolated site as a cult site of Zeus on a mountaintop, but this is part of a larger network, and that's where François de Polignac joined our research, and is very much interested in the intervisibility and the links between these different sanctuaries of Zeus all around the Saronic Gulf, and we're in the very center of this area with intervisibility on good days even to Euboea, but also to Kytheron Mountain in Boeotia. And just two photos from last year where we had extremely good conditions, where you can see the Attic plain with Parnitha and Hymettos with the sanctuary of Zeus, behind again Euboea, and on the other side Mount Arachnaion in the Peloponnese, behind Moni Island and Angistri. It's one of the few places actually, or maybe the unique place from where you can see both Argos and Athens in one view. And here, so with good eyes or a good camera lens, you can clearly also see the point of Hellanionoros, but also the Attic sanctuaries of Zeus behind. And it is certainly not only as a place of cult, but it's really a site that marks the area, certainly with a role in seafaring as well. Last year it was possible to see all the western parts of the Cyclades, even down to Milos and small rocky islands like Falconera. They were all visible towards the south in the Aegean Sea. Now, the visibility is not always as good as this, and after all, Zeus is known as the god responsible for weather, especially on Mount Hellanionoros, since Aiakos, his son, was worshipping him there, sacrificing to him there during a drought. But this is also something we can document, of course, while working on the site with this impressive photo towards Peloponnese and Methana Peninsula. Now, it is a site that clearly changed its function throughout the years, and it seems to be very closely related to what's happening at Colonna during periods of flourishing, but also periods of decline. When Colonna is at its heyday, both during Middle and Late Bronze Age, but also, of course, in the first millennium BCE, this is an important sanctuary that really marks the entire area, as I hope to have shown. But in times of insecurity, this is also a place where people took refuge. Might this be at the very end, at the collapse of the Mycenaean period? Might this be in the medieval period again, where we have another small settlement on the top? Now today, it's again a site of worship, and it was an extremely unique experience to be there for the all-night celebration of Analypsy or Ascension in June 2024. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tobias. We're entering now the Euboean phase of our presentation. And I will start with a new project we started this year on the ancient harbor of Eretria. So since the rediscovery of Eretria and the first excavations conducted in the 19th century, no systematic research has been devoted to the ancient harbor. And this gap in research has pretty much limited our understanding of a city that is deeply connected to seafaring and maritime trade from its very early day. So to address this, a collaborative 3-year project was launched this summer, bringing together the effort of Underwater Antiquities, the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece, and the Octopus Foundation in Switzerland, under the joint direction of Dr. Eleni Banu, which I salute here, who is here tonight with us, and myself. The objectives of this first season were to gather all existing documentation, to familiarize ourselves with the harbor, to study and map visible structures, and also clean sections of the most prominent structures in order to study their mode of construction and, as far as possible, the chronology. A bathymetric model was successfully created using sonar mounted on a remote control vessel. And because the sea level in the first millennium BCE was approximately 1.5 meters lower than it is today, the structures now submerged to this depth were built on dry land. So new sections of the Hellenistic fortifications protecting the harbor were cleaned and surveyed for the first time. And they consist of masonry walls made of conglomerate headers and stretchers, preserved up to 3 courses resting on foundations. We also found mortises for lead or iron joints, and this indicates that the wall was assembled on land, and that's an essential detail for reconstructing the ancient topography. These walls protected a very large structure seen here in gray, and the structure is composed of rubble masonry extending over a considerable length of 160 meters and a height of up to 3 meters. And the bathymetric analysis indicates that this structure followed the ancient shoreline, as you can see on the plan, functioning as both a breakwater and a seawall. And architectural evidence suggests that the breakwater may have been a quay for the mooring of ships. The most impressive feature of the Eretria ancient harbor is found at the western end of the harbor, and it's a mole stretching over 600 meters. And it's oriented north-south, and it protects the anchorage against westerly wind. Now today, as you can see here, more than half of its length is covered by the modern mole, with its southern end hosting a lighthouse. Now, observation suggests the construction technique of the structure is very similar to that of the breakwater we saw before, consisting of rubble masonry with stones of varying size and stacked together. And you can see here the modern mole built on top of the ancient one, but suddenly they changed their mind, thank God, and they made this turn here, so this protects the ancient mole. Now, this structure that you see here from this drone picture really shows the width of this construction, which is 32 meters wide. It's a monumental feature. Now, we do lack for the time being the chronological evidence, but its ancient date is beyond doubt. So this is the most impressive feature of the harbor of Eretria, and it protects the harbor, the ancient harbor, from silting. It also protects the boats from the strong westerly winds, which bring very high waves towards the shore. So we'll need future fieldwork, of course, to focus on key areas of the harbor, but a start is a start, and we're really happy and we're looking forward to the next season, starting in 2025, in order to complete our understanding of the ancient port's strategic significance and its role with the Euboean network. And I would like to thank you can see here another picture of the western mole saved by the turn. You can see here the plan of Eretria, and these new features really change our understanding of the harbor as well as its defensive capabilities. And I would like to thank here the entire team for their hard yet very pleasant work in a very nice office space. As you can see, the school main project in 2024 focused on the Aegina and Amarynthos, combining excavation, archaeological field survey, and geoarchaeology. The 2024 excavation in Amarynthos brought its lot of spectacular discoveries, revealing, as you will see later, a Mycenaean building just below the geometric temple, including late Bronze Age weaponry and artifacts preserved in geometric layers, as well as a rich series of exotica from Egypt and even Phoenicia. Now, all this will be presented in detail by Tamara Saggini, and I'm sure that many of you tonight are here just probably for Amarynthos. So after 13 consecutive campaigns, fieldwork, I have to say, will be put on hold in order to set aside time for study and publication. In this regard, I'm very happy to announce that the school inaugurated this year a new series, the Amarynthos series, not in blue, but in green. And the first volume is beautifully represented by Denis Knopfler's book on Hellenistic inscriptions discovered in the sanctuary, and a complete survey on the institutional role played by the Artemision within Eretrian political institutions. Now, Denis Knopfler, honorary professor at the Collège de France in Paris and the University of Neuchâtel, who is here tonight, is, of course, the mastermind behind the rediscovery of the Artemision. And it means a lot for all of us that he's the first author of this new series. We also have initiated a new phase of archaeological site planning, involving the development of a long-term strategy to open and present the site to the public. Now, you can see on this picture that the modern constructions obstruct a bit the way. So the first step in this initiative is a painful and expensive one. It's to take care of the modern villas that were built over the sanctuary and the temple over several decades. So in 2024, we destroyed the first two villas built immediately on the temple, and more surgical cleaning is planned in the future while working on a master plan in collaboration with, of course, the Efrat. The excavation in Amarynthos are part of a larger archaeological survey whose main goal is to study the long-term human occupation of the Eretria-Amarynthos plain and the integration of the shrine of Artemis within the ancient landscape. And this survey is co-directed by Angeliki Mossi and myself, with a collaboration of Chloé Chezot from the University of Lausanne, who is here tonight, and Olga Kiriatsi from the Efrat of Euboea. So So this year, with the participation of 20 students, which is the largest team since the beginning of the project, the campaign covered 500 hectares and documented close to 2,000 survey units and recorded 33 ancient features. Now, over 4 seasons, the total area systematically investigated by our survey is 30 square kilometers, including 17 square kilometers using the so-called intensive method, with field walkers walking 10 meters apart. And in 4 years, we uncovered 200 archaeological features from all periods and counted more than 140,000 pottery sherds and tile fragments on the surface. Now, our study involves a comprehensive geomorphological mapping and analysis conducted by Tibor Talas from the University of Lausanne. And in 2024, a precise erosion model for the area was developed, enabling us to understand the formation of the Amarynthos Delta and how human occupation adapted to the natural environment over the long term. Now, I'm happy to talk about the LiDAR component of this project. And we have added this LiDAR-based remote sensing, which is, as you probably know, revolutionizing the field of archaeology, especially landscape archaeology. So, as you probably know, LiDAR is capable of removing the tree canopy and vegetation, and LiDAR technology can scan the ground from the air to reveal the presence of human-made features. LiDAR technology is a groundbreaking innovation that has an enormous impact on survey archaeology, and it provides an invaluable tool for the remote identification of an extensive range of archaeological features. Now, its most spectacular application is found probably in the jungles of South America, but its implementation in Greece by archaeological landscape projects is becoming standard practice, as seen during the latest conference on LiDAR in Greece, organized by the American School. And at present, the Eretria Amarynthos survey holds the most extensive LiDAR coverage area in any Greek archaeological project, which is about 220 square kilometers. Now, our systematic use of LiDAR technology, followed by ground truthing, helped us identify and map hundreds of remotely located anomalies, which you can't see on a picture. I'm showing here the aerial picture. You add the LiDAR, and you can see anomalies here. And we can send our teams right there. It's a great gain of time, and identify them. In this case, the central was a Byzantine church. In other instances, you can directly see ancient quarries, graves, necropolis. Here, another Byzantine church. Entire sites that show up thanks to karstic cavities, large wells, and also illegal excavation. And this is something I think that can be used in the future to use systematic LiDAR technology to monitor the Greek landscape in the next 10, 15, 25 years. So after 4 years of field survey, a more precise picture of ancient occupation emerges in the Eretria Amarynthos plain, thus allowing us to understand the integration of the Amarynthos shrine within a complex ancient landscape. The peak of occupation was reached in the classical and early Hellenistic periods, which corresponds to the sanctuary's apex. We have identified 10 large settlements in the plain. You see them here, which correspond to ancient demes, vimi, some of which were identified by name using epigraphy and historical geography. And beyond these settlement cores, we find large site halos and pottery densities, which represent the archaeological surface signature of dispersed dwellings, farmsteads, gardens, cemeteries, animal sheds, small barracks, field walls, and quarries. Now, these demes were not isolated, and they were linked by a dense road network, and you can see the dark lines of what we think were the ancient roads, and all this creates a really dense communication network in the Eretria Amarynthos plain. So all these nodes of habitation were interconnected by a dense communication network, facilitating movement, social interaction, trade, transfer of goods and services, and of course, civic democratic participation. Now, it increasingly appears that defining the Amarynthos shrine as extra-urban or just rural just misses the point. Symbolically and geographically, the Artemision was a Kora sanctuary whose deity was perceived in the middle of a complex landscape made of settlements, movements, itineraries, exchanges, economic exploitation, and perception. Now, it's very nice to survey the lands, but we archaeologists have this always big question. Who are the people who exploited and lived in these landscapes that we study. This is, of course, an archaeologist's dream, but things are slowly changing. As you know, genetic material obtained from bones has yielded near complete genome sequences, and we're monitoring now a real revolution in archaeology thanks to ancient DNA. As you probably know, in 2010, an entire Neanderthal genome was mapped for the first time, making the groundbreaking discovery that modern Homo sapiens, all of us here, held 2% of our DNA in common with extinct Neanderthals. In the last decade, scientists have sequenced the genomes of more than 10,000 ancient individuals, and this number is growing, expanding every month, literally. Ancient DNA can reveal family relationships, kinship patterns, and migrations. Molecular techniques enable data to be extracted from fragmentary remains, shedding new light on past diseases and pathologies, diets, and migrations. Analysis of pathogens revealed the disease and epidemics suffered by past societies. I'm happy to report that we started a new ancient DNA project, and we're gathering key genetic data on the ancient populations that live between Eretria and Amarynthos. And this project is co-directed by my colleague at the University of Lausanne, Professor Ana Malaspinas, from the Computational Biology Lab at the university. And the project has collected great genetic data for literally dozens of individuals, and we're moving forward with more dozens of analysis. And already the first results are showing genetic origins, highlighting very complex movements of people in and out of Euboea between prehistory, the early Iron Age, especially during the Roman period, massive migrations around the Mediterranean, and of course the Byzantine period. And we're really looking forward to ongoing results in this project, gathering more data on individuals from Amarynthos and Eretria to really focus on the ancient populations that live in the areas that occupy our studies for decades now. On this, I'm going to turn the podium to the last guest tonight, Dr. Tamara Saggini, who will focus on the results of the 2024 excavation of the sanctuary, and then I will wrap it up. Tamara?
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're still holding on. We are reaching the end. So tonight I will share with you the results of the 2024 excavation in Amarynthos. And it's quite an emotional moment as it was the final season of our 5-year project dedicated to uncovering the origins of the sanctuary of Artemis, a journey marked by the exploration of the temple itself. For this journey in particular, I am deeply grateful to my colleagues on the field, Samuel Verdon, Thierry Teria, Jérôme André, and Tobias Krapf, and to our Greek colleagues. Today, on this occasion, I will take the opportunity to reflect on the results of our work in Amarynthos with respect to Eretria, following a chronological framework from the Bronze Age to the end of the Archaic period. As you know, systematic excavation started a bit more than 10 years ago and have uncovered numerous buildings dated from the Bronze Age to the medieval period. In 2024, our efforts focused on reaching the earliest occupation layers in a trench previously open within the prehistoric settlement on Paleoclesias Hill and on completing the excavation of the geometric archaic temple. The excavation conducted in the prehistoric settlement by my colleague Tobias Krapf brought significant new results. In a deep trench at the summit of the hill, the natural substrate was reached. Directly above this virgin layer, the first occupation strata was packed with pottery going back to the early Helladic one. The trench is now offering nearly 3 meters of Bronze Age stratigraphy, attesting an occupation throughout this period. At the same period in Eretria, 2 find spots have yielded material. On the Acropolis, pottery dated to the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC was found, And down in the plain, a small settlement is attested by the material dated to the second half of the 3rd millennium BC, so number 2 to 5 on the map. This material studied by Sylvie Müller indicates many contacts with Thessaly, the Cyclades, and the western part of Anatolia. Moving down to the 2nd millennium, traces of an occupation were discovered on the Acropolis, whereas in the plain, the rising water levels prevent probably the establishment of a settlement. For the LH3C, only a small pottery assemblage was discovered on the Acropolis in Eretria, while scattered pottery attests an occupation overall in Amarynthos. Structures, however, going back to the LH3C, are present only in the plain in Amarynthos in 2 sectors, to the east, where a massive wall was found, and to the west in the temple sector. The oldest structure in the temple sector, built in 18, was one of the 2 major surprises of the last excavation. A 10 meters long wall was brought to light, which connects to a second perpendicular wall, revealing the outline of a substantial construction. The dry stone walls present well-constructed facings and were later partially reused by the next building, as you can see on the left photo. Unfortunately, the material is for now too limited to suggest a secure dating for the structure. Built directly above it, the second oldest structure in the sector, Building 15, dates to the LH3C period. Its plan is now complete, revealing dimensions of 15 by 7 meters. The walls are quite massive, reaching up to 80 centimeters wide, with well-crafted masonry, particularly visible in the cornerstones as shown on the left photo. The building is divided into 3 rooms, and among the notable finds associated with its use, we can note 2 craters in the back room. In front of the building, we should highlight, on the one hand, the discovery of a bull figurine and a T-shaped figurine in geometric layers, and on the other hand, a significant amount of Bronze Age pottery discovered both in deep layers associated with its use and in later construction fields. This suggests a larger occupation of the area during this period, and further excavation within the sector and in the surroundings will be crucial for gaining a deeper understanding of this phase. Moving on to the Submycenaean, proto-geometric, and earlier geometric periods, the evidence is lacking in Eretria before the middle of the 9th century and very limited in Amarynthos. In general, again, the scattered pottery found in Amarynthos indicates a continuous occupation. In the eastern sector, we seem to have a possible stratigraphical continuity. On the contrary, in the temple sector, the material becomes scarce between the 10th and the 9th century. It is during the 8th century that both sites experience a significant expansion. The development of Eretria begins in the early 8th century. At least 4 sectors, in at least 4 clusters, 4 sectors, clusters of building have been uncovered, indicating a growing urban activity and rapidly evolving in a prosperous site with strong connection to the east, South Italy, and the northern Aegean. In Amarynthos, the discovery of 3 apsidial buildings and several ankitrismoi highlight the extensive site development in the eastern sector. In the temple sector, our current knowledge is rather limited in surface, as we excavated only within a perimeter of 39 by 10 meters, so the red rectangle on the slide. But interestingly, the material discovered in this sector suggests that cult activities may have preceded the construction of the apsidial temple. In fact, to the east of the later temple, 6 bronze animal figurines were discovered in geometric layers, stratigraphically situated beneath the altar visible on the screen, which is dated to the end of the 8th century. To the west, the evidence comes from a thick fill thick backfill, actually, used during the construction of the late 8th century temple. This layer was packed with pottery, including approximately 200 high-quality cantharoi, but also schiphoi and hydriskoi. After working 10 full days on this material last month with my colleague Samuel Verdon and 6 students, we made these first observations. The vessels were not dumped directly into the backfill, as none of them is complete, but rather they were brought from an area nearby, as shown by the many fragments joining into almost complete vases. And the vases seems to have been intentionally integrated into the dump because it's definitely not residual material. Additionally, we didn't note any traces of fire or intended destruction by trampling. Together with this pottery, with the pottery in this field, a wealth of material was discovered: iron instrument and weaponry, Bronze Age weaponry, jewelry, amulets, faience vases, and a beautiful relief votive bowl depicting cows and the goddess Hathor. Thus, our current hypothesis is that the material present in this layer likely reflects cultic activities preceding the construction of the temple, or even possibly one punctual event occurring during the construction of the temple to celebrate its foundation. Now, the first temple of Artemis is built at the end of the 8th century or the beginning of the 7th, and its foundations are laid directly on top of the Mycenaean building 15, which was perhaps still visible and influencing the new construction. With 32 meters by 9, the building is almost identical to the Temple of Apollo in Eretria, built around the same time. The walls of the temple are reinforced at regular intervals by posts placed on the inside part and by a central colonnade. The temple is divided into 3 rooms, much like the previous Mycenaean building. Room A, which is the largest, features an entrance to the east, marked by a porch supported by 4 columns, also one of the last year's surprises. Then Room B is smaller and can be accessed to through 2 separate openings. And finally, the absidial room C at the back, which is the smallest. A common feature across all 3 rooms is the presence of combustion structures, each of different shape, size, and maybe functions. Here you can see the porch to the east, the entrance in the center, and the last absidial room, which is way smaller than 2 others. Here you can see the final plan of the geometric archaic temple, showing all the changes of last year's excavation. And for room C, there are no clear indication of a door. So one possible explanation for now is that the gamma-shaped wall may have formed a sideway entrance, which could also be convenient with the presence of a central colonnade. During the early archaic period, the sanctuary was monumentalized by 2 new porticos to the north and to the east of the temple, creating a large courtyard. The temple itself was used throughout the 7th century and part of the 6th century, likely undergoing several changes, even if no longer visible. As for Eretria, the sectors already occupied during the geometric period continued to develop in the 7th century. The gradual canalization of the river played a role in this expansion, and the new sanctuary dedicated to Athena was established on the Acropolis. However, our knowledge of this period remained limited, and we expect more results soon, as a new PhD candidate, Nina Nicole, will begin working on this topic in September. The second half of the 6th century is marked by several changes. First, the temple of Artemis at Amarynthos is destroyed by a fire around 550-525. At this stage, we don't know yet whether the fire was accidental or deliberate, nor whether it affected other buildings within the sanctuary. As you already know from other presentations, following the fire, the area was quickly rehabilitated with a temporary arrangement made of mud brick walls, outlined in orange, combined with the existing northern and western walls of the temple in order to create a functional space around the altars. In this way, cult activities could resume without interruption, while allowing for a gradual installation of the foundation for a new stone temple. Once the foundations were completed, the closing of the former cult area and the transition to the new temple were marked by the deposition of a large assemblage of offerings such as vases, figurines, amulets, jewelry, and weaponry. Finally, the entire area was backfilled and the construction of the new temple was completed. Unfortunately, only a few architectural fragments of the elevation were preserved and no used layers are connected to this building. Going back to Eretria, this period is marked by the expansion of the urban grid and the gradual construction of a surrounding fortification. A new temple of Apollo Daphnephoros is erected, and a series of porticos now define an agora in the southern part of the city. These wealthy decades were marked by numerous ambitious building projects demanding significant human and economic resources, which had to be carefully balanced between the main urban center and the extramural sanctuary at Amarynthos. Perhaps this context might explain the temporary mud brick walls constructed in the temple of Artemis. The flourishing period of Eretria is suddenly interrupted by the Persian sack of the city in 490. The temple of Artemis must have been completed before, as supported by the chronology of the pottery from the construction field and the architectural fragments of the elevation. It also seems unlikely that Eretria would have still been in the position to support such a project after 490. In contrast, however, current evidence shows no traces so far of a Persian raid in Amarynthos. To conclude, the next major goal is the prompt publication of the geometric archaic temple, and a dedicated team is already working intensively toward this. We wish to thank them all very warmly, as well as all the students, conservators, museum staff, and collaborators who have contributed to this effort with such commitment and enthusiasm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamara. So I do realize that I'm the last thing standing between you and a glass of cold Swiss wine in the garden, but I'm taking the stage, I promise, for the last time of tonight, just for a few minutes to round up things and reflect upon the future. So the Swiss School will continue its mission in Eretria and Greece for many decades to come, we all hope. And we're facing many challenges, also in terms of heritage management and conservation. The venerable Eretria Museum is now fully packed, and we plan to extend the apotheke by building a new extension as soon as our plan gets approved by the Ministry of Culture. The new building will ensure professional storage and heritage management for the next 50 years of excavations in Eretria and Amarynthos. The Artemision Excavations, now the school's flagship project, will continue for many decades, both in the sanctuary area and the hill. We will progressively open the site to the public and present the ancient remains to the local community. The removal of modern villas will continue in parallel with restoration and eventually anastylosi. In parallel, the school will continue in the next decades to monitor the technological revolutions that are shaping archaeology: 3D scanning, photogrammetry, LiDAR, and micromorphology, paleoenvironments, ancient DNA, and artificial intelligence. It's coming. Now, I could never achieve a tenth of my job without the help of a dedicated team of collaborators. You heard some of them tonight. More are behind the scene, both in Lausanne and in Athens. And I want to thank Thierry Toria, Samuel Verdon, Chloé Chezot, Tobias Krapf, Daphne Vlandi, Tamara Saggini, and all the Eretria staff in the museum, the restoration team, and the house personnel too. I would also like to thank the Foundation Board, all of its members. Some of them made the trip to Athens today, and in particular President Pascal Broulis and Vice President Martial Paquet. This brings me to the two promised announcements. At the end of June, the contract of our scientific secretary in Greece, Tobias Krapf, will come to an end. Hired in 2015, Tobias Krapf has made an essential contribution to the school's research project while ensuring their administrative coordination with rigor and enthusiasm. The school expresses its deep gratitude to Tobias for all these years. And we will hope to continue actively his career and to support him in the future. Today, Tobias is continuing his academic activities this semester. He's teaching in Lausanne, and next semester he will be teaching at the University of Basel, but also a summer session at the American School of Classical Studies this summer. So I wish him good luck, for all the best for his career, but I'm confident that he will always remain in the orbit of the school. Now, he will be replaced by a person well known to you because she was on stage before, and this is Dr. Tamara Saggini. And we're delighted that the position of scientific secretary of the school in Greece will be held by a woman, since Sylvie Müller has held this post in the early 90s. And it's also the first time since 1964 that a researcher from the University of Geneva is holding this position. Last but not least, I have the honor of announcing that the Swiss School will have a renewed presence in Athens with the relocation to new headquarters in June 2026. It will be part of a groundbreaking project, the Swiss Center for Diplomacy, Research and Culture, which will bring together in one single building the Swiss Embassy and the Swiss Consulate in Greece, the Swiss School of Archaeology, and the Flux Foundation of the Patrick et Cynthia Odier family. And this is the first time a Swiss embassy will share a common building with scientific and cultural institutions. And it will also hold an exhibition hall for future lectures, exhibits, concerts, movies, etc., and probably annual meetings. This, again, I think, tells a lot about the role of Athens and Greece in Switzerland, and the new Swiss Center at Athens will promote cultural and scientific diplomacy. It also represents a new milestone in the long history of Swiss Philhellenism. For the Swiss School, this initiative would have been impossible without the generous support of the Evangelos Pistiolis Foundation, based in Switzerland, whose primary objectives are to promote historical and archaeological studies and foster cultural and scientific diplomacy. Evangelos has become a friend, and he has a deep passion for Roman history, and I would say an academic knowledge of Roman culture and history. And whenever I see him, I have to revise my chronology of Roman emperors. We're very grateful to Evangelos Pistiolis for his support, and he's present tonight with his wife Despina, and I thank them both for attending. Another major contribution was offered by the state, Canton de Vaud, represented, as you saw before, tonight by the councillor Frédéric Borloo, thanks to an exceptional structural grant. We're very grateful, and we hope to work closely with the Canton de Vaud to offer fellowships in residence in Athens in the future and to build an enduring scientific and cultural hub for Swiss scholars in Greece. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're not only marking a passage of time, we're honoring a legacy of knowledge, friendship, and shared discovery that spans generations and borders. So let us continue to build on this legacy. Thank you very much. And as promised, a glass of wine organized by the Swiss Embassy. So we thank you again for your generosity, and let's all gather in the garden. Thank you very much.